Hello, this is the Mushroom Wizard, and I'm returning once again with another presentation regarding the mushrooms found in Saskatchewan and the ways in which we go about picking and identifying those mushrooms so that we can pick them safely. So today we're going to be looking at the last video that I have regarding species that are edible. There will be other videos, more along the lines of special interest videos, and this kind of gray area between edible and toxic. But this is the last presentation regarding strictly edible species, and I would consider this to be the most advanced group of edible mushrooms, and that is the Webcaps of Saskatchewan, at least the edible ones. Some people might be thinking, well, wouldn't that be the Amanitas of Saskatchewan that would be the most advanced? I firmly believe that webcaps are more dangerous in this province, at least, than Amanitas are, because death caps and destroying angels are actually very easy to identify. The reason they cause so many fatalities is more of a kind of a cultural, social issue with people immigrating here from Asia and mistaking straw mushrooms for death caps and vice versa. So the webcaps, however, I'm just going to move along to the genre. These all belong to the Cortinarius genus, and in Saskatchewan we actually have a lot of Cortinarius species or webcap species. So it is thought that at least a third of the species found here belong to the Cortinarius genus. Now, people that know about the Cortinarius genus a bit and go mushroom picking, particularly in the wooded areas of Saskatchewan, will probably be thinking, well, you know what, I haven't found more than maybe 4 or 5 types of Cortinarius, and there are a lot of Cortinarius species, especially in summer and fall. But I haven't found an abundance of species types. Well, you may actually have found an abundance and just not knowing it, because many of those species look pretty much the same from one to another. Macroscopically, they are very similar or identical, and the difference between edibility ranges from edible to fatal, and fatal in much the same way that Amanita species are fatal. And it's not really known how many species of fatal Cortinarius mushrooms are here. We know of 7 that belong to the orellanine group, which is a group of mushrooms that contain the toxin orellanine. But in recent decades, species in North America have been discovered that also contain this, and it's just not well known. Due to that macroscopic similarity. And since in Saskatchewan, we really don't know what even occurs here for the most part, we can expect that there are at least several species that do contain orellanine, which basically destroys your liver and again is fatal. So that is why I believe that this is a genus that is strictly for advanced mushroom keepers. So what are webcaps? Webcaps are mushrooms, again, in the genus Cortinarius. They have a web-like cortina that covers the gills when young, instead of a membranous partial veil. So that's a distinctive feature. And we're going to look at a few of those at the end of this genus, a few cortinas. These also have a telltale rust red spore print. And the spore deposit that is produced is usually very, very thick, so much so that spores will literally coat the gills and change the color of the gills drastically at maturity to the rust red color that we associate with this genus. Like I said, these account for nearly 1/3 of the mushrooms found in Saskatchewan and include some of the most toxic species known. So, what you're going to notice here, that with one exception, and that's the gypsy mushroom, we're going to be looking primarily at purple mushrooms or violet mushrooms. And that is because though there are toxic violet species in this province, they aren't fatally toxic. This is not orellanine that we're talking about. As a result, you can safely pick violet species without fear of death. So the first one we're going to look at is the violet webcap, Cortinarius violaceus. And this is a beautiful, beautiful mushroom. It's quite big. So the cap is dark purple, becoming brownish purple with age. It is convex to campanulate, and if you recall, campanulate is kind of like the shape of a bell in an old-fashioned bell tower, and it flattens out with age, sometimes retaining an umbo and becoming umbonate. An umbonate is where you're flat and you have that bump in the middle, kind of like a flying saucer. So that's not happening to this particular mushroom. This one just looks like it's flattening out. These are fibrillose and hairy, and you can see that very clearly here. It looks like kind of like a shag, purple shag carpet has been laid over the top of the mushroom. The margin is downturned at first, becoming smooth, and then appendiculate or tomentose. So really it's the same thing with the Cortinarius, because the Cortina doesn't leave remnants of a partial veil, but it leaves remnants of those hair-like fibers. So it's very hairy sort of appendiculate, if you can imagine that. And then these grow up to about 5 inches in diameter, so they are a good-sized mushroom. And you can see that spore deposit on the stipe, if you look closely at the bottom there, that rust red color, and that is going to be pretty much the universal color of the spore prints for the Cortinarius genus. So here's a size reference for you. Again, it's a fairly large mushroom, a very pretty mushroom. So the gills are purple, and they become rusty brown with age because of, again, of that heavy spore deposit. And you can see that starting to occur there as well. Spots on the gills that have already turned that rusty red brown. If you were to rub those gills, you could rub the spores off and they would be, again, that purple underneath. These are adnate, so they reach across and dip down towards the stipe. They are close together, not crowded or distant, but close. And you should be able to see the short gills and the numbering of them pretty clearly between each gill as a result. They are covered with a cortina when young, so that sort of hairy or web-like structure that covers the gills. If you look on the left very closely, you can see like a kind of like a wispy strand off the margin, and that's going to be something that you want to look for when you're trying to determine if mushrooms you're picking are in the Cortinarius genus. And then these produce a rusty brown spore print. You can see that very clearly also on the stipe again. So the stipe is the same color as the cap. They are clavate to bulbous. If you recall, clavate is kind of like a gradual taper towards the apex from a thick base. And bulbous is where you just have the same width throughout and then more of a ball at the end. They have a central attachment to the cap. They are fibrillose and scaly. And then they produce a heavy spore deposit. And combined with a wispy cortina, it creates sort of like that ring there. So the ring will actually, that ring zone will actually just be like that rusty red color, but it will also have sort of wispy strands sticking out. So it's a very unique looking ring zone. And that's also going to be common with members of the Cortinarius genus. And then this grows up to about 6 inches high, so it is a fairly large mushroom. In terms of ecology, these are mycorrhizal with conifers. So you'll find them more in the northern and like central areas where you have woodlands that are mixed or boreal, kind of coniferous woodlands. They are terrestrial in nature. They are not very common. They're solitary to scattered, but generally speaking, because I have found this mushroom, when I do find them, it's only ever one. And yeah, and if there would be more, they would be kind of distant apart from each other. And as a result, you'll never find really more than one or two. Good thing they're large. These occur summer through fall. cooler weather. In terms of the edibility, these are pretty good for Cortinarius or for a webcap species. Most webcaps, I think, taste kind of like crap. These ones taste okay. I would equate them about the same as a button mushroom from the store. Slightly different taste, but similar quality. They smell of cedar wood, so that's kind of a good way of determining if you have the right species in hand. Once again, these are for advanced mushroom pickers. So here we do have a toxic lookalike. We have Cortinarius violaceus on the left and Cortinarius iodioides on the right. Cortinarius iodioides is a much smaller mushroom that is coated with a layer of slime. Beyond being in the same genus and that purple color, those are really the only attributes that are the same. So they should be easy enough for advanced mushroom pickers to tell apart. However, Cortinarius iodioides can make you quite sick. It shouldn't kill you, but it can make you quite sick. So moving on, this is the gypsy mushroom. I've already mentioned it. It is called Cortinarius caparatus. And this mushroom, I would not say it's for advanced mushroom pickers because it looks absolutely nothing like a Cortinarius. In fact, it doesn't even have a cortina. So it is a highly sought after mushroom as well. This is a cap that is yellowish tan and it darkens with age. They are spherical, becoming convex, flattening out with age. So when I say spherical, I mean that margin there kind of curls underneath and pretty much touches the stipe. It has a very thick partial veil that is, it doesn't flare out very far. As a result, that margin is almost touching the stipe. My mouth is very dry, I apologize. So the cap is wrinkled and somewhat uneven as a result if you were to run your fingers across, and you can see the wrinkling there pretty clearly. And then this is covered with a thin, whitish, fibrous layer when young that disappears as the mushroom expands. And this is unique to this mushroom. Like, I have not seen this in other mushrooms. It's almost like a sock or what you wear around your neck in the winter is on this mushroom. And I'm going to show you a picture because it's really hard to describe what I'm talking about. And I'll show you that in a second here. And that is in place when young and is independent of that partial veil. The margin becomes striate as it ages. It isn't striate right now. What you're looking at is actually about to turn striate as it lifts upwards. And then these grow up to about 6 inches in diameter, so a very large mushroom. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, you can see that layer that I'm talking about, that sock-like layer, like somebody put a sock over top of it. And that will kind of rip away and disappear completely as the mushroom ages. It's a unique structure. It's there in place of a cortina. And again, you're not going to see that with anything else. So it's very hard to mistake this mushroom for something else as a result. Here is a size reference for you. Again, a very large mushroom with a very distinct annulus around the stipe there. So the gills are pale brown, becoming rusty brown with age. They are adnate, so again, they will dip. The gills will reach across and dip down towards the stipe. They are close together, and short gills are frequent between those regular gills. This is covered by a partial veil when young, so no cortina, and these produce the rusty brown spore print that we know from the Cortinarius genus. The stipe is off-white, turning tan with age. You can see that starting to happen at the base of this stipe here. It is cylindrical, so the same width throughout, and it produces a central attachment to that cap. And then this grows up to about 6 inches high and 1 inch thick, so again, a very large mushroom. There is that annulus. It is very thick. It is flaring and kind of turned upwards. It is not wide, like it doesn't extend outwards very far. So it's a very unique looking Annulus. In terms of the ecology, it is quite complicated. These ones are mycorrhizal with hardwoods and conifers and blueberries. So if you want to maximize your chances, look for areas in mixed forests that have blueberries. And you may find these mushrooms there. I have yet to find this mushroom. This is on my bucket list of mushrooms to try, something I am actively searching for. So if you know where they grow, let me know. They are terrestrial. They are solitary to scattered, mostly solitary. When you find this mushroom, you may only find one or two. It's a good thing they're very big. And these are found summer through fall. These are choice mushrooms that are highly sought after. They are good in any dish, from what I've read. And these are for intermediate mushroom pickers because it really is difficult to mistake this for anything else. Moving on, we have here the Silvery Violet Webcap, Cortinarius alboviolaceus. This is a very common mushroom in Saskatchewan. So, I tend to find these mushrooms around, in spruce forests around Christopher Lake and Emma Lake. And there they are very, very common, like I've said. The caps are silvery purple, becoming lighter with age, so very distinctive color-wise. And they're quite reflective, and you can see they're not slimy, so that's not from mucus, but it's from that silvery color. They are convex, flattening out with age, sometimes becoming slightly depressed with the margins turning upwards and kind of creating this sort of cup. But they always retain a shallow umbo at maturity. So they will either be umbonate or umbilicate. And umbonate, I'll show you a picture with both in a minute here, is kind of flat with an umbo, and umbilicate is more of a cup shape with an umbo in the middle. These are smooth or slightly fibrillous. If you run your finger across them, you could sort of see that quality here too. It's almost like there are streaks that are actually more fibers that have been pressed down very tightly. The margin is downturned at first, becoming slightly wrinkled or wavy, and it says sometimes, but it's actually very often. As the mushroom goes upwards, the margins go upwards, they split, and they'll sometimes split almost right to the center. And these grow up to about 3 inches in diameter. Here's that splitting that I'm talking about. And you can see that it's turned upwards almost like a cup. It's got a little bump in the middle, but it looks almost like flower petals. And it is a very attractive mushroom, I will say that. Here you can see a size reference. And what I want you to notice as well, because we're going to talk about this again, is the stipes and the variability in the stipe shape. Right on the right-hand side, we can see something that looks very different from what's on the left-hand side. The gills are pale lilac and almost with this sort of silvery sheen when very young, and then they become purple and then rusty brown with age as they become coated with the spore deposit. They are adnate, so they dip down before they touch the stipe. They are close together. The short gills are fairly frequent between the regular sets of grills, so they'll be like 2 to 3. And then, of course, this mushroom is covered with a cortinoid young, so that sort of wispy sort of layer there, and I'll show you a picture of that in a second. And then this produces a rusty brown spore print. There you can see the cortina. It's not the best photo, it's kind of blurry, but you can see sort of like these wispy fibers going from the stipe to the margin. And that would be very thick when the mushroom is young and the gills are still developing. Now the stipe is the same color as the cap, but they display a high variability in terms of their shape. So here you can see cylindrical to even rooting on the left-hand side. You can see a clavate one in the middle, and then a fusiform on the right. And fusiform is where you have a taper towards the apex and the base with a thick middle. And then, of course, they can also be bulbous. So basically, it can be any sort of stipe shape that we deal with here. They form a central attachment to the cap. They are, again, fibrillose. So there will be this sort of like shaggy feel to it, almost like these pressed down fibers. And it produces a heavy spore deposit, again, around the apex of the stipe. And combined with these sort of wispy remnants of that cortina, you can expect there to be like these red sort of wispy area there. When it's more mature, you don't see that yet. Then these grow up to about 4 inches high. Here you can see, and I'll just go through this first, because I mentioned that I would show you a photo of umbonate and umbilicate. You see an umbonate mushroom on the right-hand side that's flat with a bump. On the left-hand side, those mushrooms will be umbilicate because they have a cup, and in the cup you will notice, you can't really see here, but you would notice, again, that same bump being present. So this mushroom is mycorrhizal with birch. So anywhere you find birch in the province, you're going to find this mushroom. So look for it in the mixed woods. Like I said, I find this often around areas with spruce and birch mixed together around Emma Lake. And they're terrestrial, though often they don't look terrestrial. And the reason for this is because they often grow at the base of the birch tree. They have their mycelium wrapped around the roots of that birch tree, and then sometimes they will actually push through the wood itself with the fruiting body and use the wood almost like a medium. And then they'll come up almost like they're growing off the wood, but if you were to really be able to get down there and examine it, you would realize it was going down past the wood into the soil and wrapping around the roots. These are scattered to gregarious, so you'll often find quite a number of them. And they occur summer through fall. And sometimes with this one too, you'll find them clumped together and forming like a central basal mass as they do so. In terms of their edibility, unfortunately, it is rather poor. They don't taste great. They have a radish-like taste that I like, but there's also kind of this under taste that's a little bit chemically, and not the best mushroom. I don't actively look for this mushroom. I basically pick this mushroom when I'm skunked from finding actually good mushrooms, and I just want to take something home that I could eat or chuck in a spaghetti sauce. These are for advanced mushroom pickers. And just to clarify again, if you see this mushroom and you don't know that you're looking at a Cortinarius almost immediately, you shouldn't be picking Cortinarius mushrooms to eat. That's the way I go about it. You should still be picking them so that you can learn what you're looking at, but maybe not consuming unless you have 100% verification that you have the right mushroom in hand. So the mushrooms we're going to look at here, I just stuck them together because neither one of these mushrooms is really, again, a mushroom you're going to go out searching for specifically. These are slimy purple webcaps. So on the left, we have the Bruising Webcap. That's Cortinarius purpurescens. And on the left, it's on the left. And on the right, we have the Viscid Webcap, and that's Cortinarius iodes. They're little mushrooms. They're purple. They're slimy. So again, the caps are purple. And with the Bruising Webcap, they turn brown with age. Or if you damage them, they'll actually bruise brown. It's a really gross brown. We're going to look at that in a second. What we're looking at on the right there is Cortinarius iodes, and that's a purple turning tan in the center with age. These mushrooms are both convex, flattening out with age. They are smooth and covered with a thick layer of slime. The margin is downturned at first, becoming smooth or wavy. I should mention as well with the Bruising Webcap, it'll have this kind of sort of uneven margin looking straight down at times, a sort of eccentric margin. But these are relatively small mushrooms. They grow up to about 3 inches in diameter. And there you can see the Bruising Webcap, and you can see the difference between a young one on the left that's sort of almost eccentric profile, and then an older one on the right. and how it kind of just gets this disgusting bruised look to it. And if you were to like push your finger into the young one on the left, it would turn that color of brown as well. So here, this is Cortinarius iodes, but they are the same size. This is a size reference, just to give you some clarification. Again, not a very big mushroom. The gills for both of them are pretty much the same. They're purple becoming rusty brown with age. They're adnate, so they reach across and they kind of dip down towards the stipe. They are crowded, so until now we've seen ones that are close or even subdistant. These ones are fairly crowded together. Short gills are frequent, and you can see just how crowded they are with the short gills are kind of pushed together. And then these are covered with a cortina when young. So again, that sort of spider web looking layer. And then these produce the same rusty brown spore print that all of the webcaps produce. We do have some difference in the stipe. On the left-hand side, that is Cortinarius iodes. On the right-hand side, that is Cortinarius purpurascens. So it is the same color as cap for Cortinarius purpurascens on the right-hand side, and then it's off-white with Cortinarius iodes on the left. It is clavate to bulbous for Cortinarius purpurascens on the right, and it's bulbous for Cortinarius iodes on the left. And you can see that big bulb there. They both produce central attachment. It is fibrillose to scaly for Cortinarius purpurascens. You can see it's almost got this sort of like kind of snakeskin appearance to it too. And then it's very smooth for Cortinarius iodes on the left. You'll have that same heavy spore deposit on both. I should mention as well that Cortinarius iodes is often kind of twisted, and it's a very thin stipe as opposed to the other one, which is much thicker. They're both about 4 inches high at the greatest. So in terms of ecology here, Cortinarius iodes is mycorrhizal with oak, and Cortinarius purpurascens is mycorrhizal with conifers. So you're much more likely in this province to find Cortinarius purpurascens, the bruising webcap. Cortinarius iodes, you're mostly going to find that either in cities where there's a good oak presence, or like urban areas, or else in the southeast portion of the province around the Qu'Appelle Valley. They are solitary to gregarious, and they occur summer through fall. Their edibility for both is poor. Their sliminess discourages picking. These are for advanced mushroom pickers. Cortinarius iodes on the left versus Cortinarius iodioides on the right. Iodioids and iodes look identical macroscopically. There is one key difference. If you lick them, the slime of Cortinarius iodes, it has a neutral taste. It doesn't taste like anything. It's like water. Cortinarius iodioides is said to be bitter. And that's it. That's the only way you can tell between the two. So again, for very advanced mushroom pickers, because they both grow in the same area. Personally, I don't care. I'm never going to actively look for this mushroom, because when I go mushroom picking, I'm not like, hey, what slimes can I lick today? So whoop-de-doo. Here is a Cortinarius spore print. They will all look like this. Cortinas, what to look for. I'm just going to give an example of some cortinas that are maybe not species found here. Maybe they are, who knows. But it's just an idea for you to get a better grasp on what to look for a younger or older cortina. You see that web there. It almost looks like a spider web. Produced a web, and the spores filled the web up. That's kind of what they look like. Most of these species should occur here, or have something similar. I see an awful lot of brown ones like that, or ones that are kind of orangish yellow. But again, never really know unless you got a microscope, or you're able to sequence their genes if you're looking at something toxic or something edible. So some red ones. There are certainly some reddish gilled Cortinarius that are fatally toxic. And that's everything. So Want to thank you for bearing with me through all of these edible species that are found in Saskatchewan. Now, if there are some that you feel I've missed, for sure, let me know. And we'll be getting into some of the more special interest areas of mushroom picking here in the upcoming presentations. So this is the Mushroom Wizard, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you.